Keep sending the money. My father said that while I laid 83 photos across his kitchen table, my sister at a rooftop pool in Dubai, boarding business class, standing in a five-star resort lobby, every single one of them timestamped to the same 7 years I had been wiring $1,450 a month for her medical debt. $122,000. No diagnosis. No doctor's name. Just my mother's voice every few months saying, "Your sister is struggling. You have to sacrifice." I didn't cry. I picked up every photo, stacked them flat, and forwarded every travel receipt to every family member in the group chat. Christmas Eve was canceled. First time in 23 years. When 14 people saw what I sent, 3 of them had already called my sister before she even woke up. What she said to defend herself cost her the last person in that family still willing to cover for her. Before I go on, take a moment to like and subscribe, but only if this story speaks to you. Drop your location and local time in the comments. Now let me take you back to the night I found the 83rd photo, the one posted from an account my sister thought only she could see. The transaction happened at 11:42 a.m. on a Tuesday. I remember the exact minute because I was sitting at my desk, eating a lukewarm salad from a plastic container and staring at my banking app. $1,450. It's a specific number. It's the kind of number that looks small to a bank, but to me, it represented 3 weeks of my life. I hit the confirm button. The screen spiraled for a second, then gave me a green check mark. Care account. That's what my mother named the recipient folder. I'm 31 years old. I work in corporate logistics, which means my entire life is built around moving things from point A to point B efficiently. I track shipments. I manage delays. I solve problems before they become disasters. But my own bank account was a graveyard of efficient transfers. Every month for 7 years, I sent that money. It was for Chloe's medical debt. It was for her condition, a word my mother treated like a sacred text. My phone buzzed before I could even take another bite of my salad. It was my mother. "Elena, honey," she said. Her voice already had that tremor, the one that signals a storm is coming. "I saw the transfer, thank you, but we have a problem. Chloe had another flare-up this morning. The pain was so bad she couldn't even stand. We had to take her to that specialized clinic, the out-of-network one in the city. They need a deposit for the new treatment cycle." I looked at the remaining balance in my account. It wasn't enough for a deposit. It was barely enough for my own car insurance. "How much, Mom?" I asked. I kept my voice flat. "3,000, she whispered. "I know it's a lot, but you're so healthy, Elena. You're so capable. You have that big job and your own apartment. Chloe, she just doesn't have the strength you have. We have to sacrifice for her. If we don't get her this treatment, I don't know what will happen." That was the logic. I was the strong one, so I had to be the anchor. Chloe was the fragile one, so she got to be the kite. My father never talked about it directly, but he enforced the silence. He'd just nod when my mother cried, looking at me with an expression that said, "Don't make this harder for her." I told my mother I'd see what I could do. I hung up and opened my calendar. I started looking for overtime shifts. If I worked through the next 2 weekends and skipped my friend's birthday dinner, I could probably find an extra 1,000. The rest would have to come from my emergency fund, the one I had been trying to build for a down payment on a house for a decade. By 9:00 p.m. on Friday, I was the only one left in the office. The cleaning crew had already finished the floors. The only light came from my dual monitors and the exit sign. I was cross-referencing shipping manifests for a client in Singapore, trying to earn an extra 4 hours of holiday pay. A shadow moved near the break room. It was David, one of our senior auditors. He's the kind of man who notices details other people miss. He doesn't say much, but he sees everything. He walked over to my desk and set a paper bag and a steaming cup of coffee next to my keyboard. "You're still here, Alina," he said quietly. "Just catching up," I lied. "You've been catching up since Monday," he replied. He gestured to the bag. "It's a lemon tart from that bakery you like. Eat it. You can't pour from an empty cup." He didn't wait for a thank you. He just walked toward the elevators. I sat there in the dark, smelling the sugar and the coffee. For 10 minutes, I didn't think about medical bills or clinics or my mother's shaking voice. I just ate the tart. It was the only thing I'd done for myself in months. I finished my work and decided to upload my updated tax documents to our shared family cloud drive. We de-used it for years, mostly for old photos and my father's insurance papers. My parents aren't great with technology, so I usually organized it for them. As I dragged my PDF into the folder, I noticed a new directory. It was titled C-Receipts 2023. It was misspelled. My mother usually handled the uploads, and she's prone to typos. I assumed it was more medical bills for my records. I clicked it, expecting to see pharmacy statements and hospital invoices. But the folder didn't contain PDFs. It was full of image files. I clicked the first one. It was a photo of a swimming pool. Not just any pool, an infinity pool on a rooftop overlooking a skyline of glass and steel. Dubai. I knew that skyline. In the corner of the frame, a tanned hand was holding a glass of champagne. The sleeve of the robe was white silk. I looked at the date on the file. November 14th. 2 days before that date, my mother had called me sobbing because Chloe needed an emergency blood panel that cost $900. I had sent the money within the hour. I felt a cold sensation start at the base of my neck. I didn't stop clicking. I opened the next photo, and the one after that. My sister in a business class pod, wrapped in a designer blanket. My sister standing in the lobby of a resort where the rooms cost more than my monthly rent. My sister at a spa, her face covered in a gold leaf mask. There were 83 photos in total. Every single one of them was time-stamped. I didn't close the laptop. I didn't cry. I just sat there in the dim office light and began to match the dates of the luxury vacations to the dates of my emergency bank transfers. They matched. They matched every single time. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on my floor with my laptop plugged into the wall, the screen glowing against the dark. I had a spreadsheet open on one side and the cloud folder on the other. I went back 3 years. June 12th, I sent $800 for Chloe's specialized physical therapy. June 13th, Chloe posted a photo of a designer handbag with the caption, "Early birthday treat to myself." The price tag on that bag, when I looked it up, was $850. August 4th, I sent $1,200 because my mother said Chloe's insurance had denied a life-saving medication. August 6th, Chloe was at a music festival in California. VIP passes. The pattern wasn't just a coincidence. It was a strategy. Every time my sister wanted something, a trip, a pair of shoes, a weekend getaway, my mother would manufacture a medical crisis. She'd use words like seizure, inflammation, and respiratory distress. She knew those words worked on me. She knew I'd skip my own meals to make sure my sister could breathe. Except my sister was breathing just fine. She was breathing the air in first-class cabins while I was breathing the stale air of a windowless office. I didn't call Chloe. I didn't call my mother. I waited until Saturday morning. I printed every single photo, all 83 of them, at a self-service kiosk. I bought a heavy 3-ring binder and sorted them by date. Next to each photo, I tucked a copy of my bank transfer receipt from that same week. I drove to my parents' house. It's a nice house. It has a wraparound porch and a lawn that my father spends every weekend perfecting. As I pulled into the driveway, I noticed the new siding. I noticed the high-end SUV in the garage. For years, I'd been told they were scraping by to help Chloe. I walked into the kitchen without knocking. My father was at the table, drinking coffee and reading the news on his tablet. My mother was at the stove, humming to herself. "Elena," my mother said, turning around with a bright, artificial smile. "What a surprise, I was just about to call you. Chloe's appointment went okay, but the specialist thinks she needs—" "Stop," I said. I placed the binder on the table. It made a heavy thud on the wood. My father looked up, his brow furrowed. "What is this?" he asked. "It's 7 years of my life," I said. "Open it." He didn't move. My mother came over, her hands wiping nervously on her apron. I opened the binder for them. I turned to the first page, the Dubai Infinity Pool. I pointed to the timestamp. Then I pointed to the receipt for the emergency clinic deposit ID sent 48 hours prior. I didn't yell, I didn't even raise my voice. I just kept turning the pages. Flip, a yacht in Greece. Flip, $1,400 for nursing care. Flip, a shopping spree in New York. Flip, $900 for emergency oxygen. The silence in the kitchen was thick. I expected my mother to burst into tears. I expected my father to be outraged that he'd been lied to. I waited for the "oh my God, we had no idea," or the "how could she do this?" Instead, my father leaned back in his chair. He didn't look at the photos. He looked at me. His face wasn't shocked. It was cold. It was the face of a man who was being inconvenienced by a minor accounting error. "Your sister has a very difficult life, Elena," he said. I stared at him. "She's in Dubai, Dad. She's in business class. I'm living in a studio apartment with a leaky ceiling and driving a car with 180,000 miles on it so I can pay for her medical bills." "There are no bills. This is fraud." "Don't use that word in this house," my mother snapped. The tremor was gone. Her voice was sharp, clinical. "Chloe is sensitive. She struggles with her mental health because of her physical limitations. If she needs a trip to feel like a normal person for a few days, who are you to judge her? You're successful, you're strong, you don't know what it's like to be her." "I know what it's like to be the person paying for her to be normal in 5-star resorts," I said. My heart was hammering against my ribs. "I'm done. I'm not sending another dime. Not for a flare-up, not for a specialist, not for anything." My father stood up. He's a big man, and he used his height to try and crowd me. "You will keep sending that money," he said. It wasn't a request, it was an order. "We've already budgeted for her next treatment cycle. If you stop now, you're putting your sister's life at risk. Is that what you want? To be the daughter who let her sister die because she was too greedy to share her paycheck?" "She isn't dying, Dad. Look at the pictures." "I've seen enough," he said, and he swiped the binder off the table. It hit the floor, the rings snapping open, photos and receipts scattering across the linoleum. "Get out of my house." I looked at my mother. She wouldn't meet my eye. She was already picking up the photos, tucking them away as if she could hide the truth by putting it back in a folder. That was the first crack. The lie wasn't just Chloe S. It was the family's. The retaliation wasn't a scream. It was a surgical strike. I woke up on Monday morning to a notification from my landlord. My security deposit, which I'd been allowed to pay in installments due to a family hardship, letter my mother had written 3 years ago, was suddenly being called in full. The landlord, a soft-spoken man named Mr. Henderson, sounded embarrassed on the voicemail. "Elena, I'm sorry," he said. "Your mother called me. She told me your circumstances had changed significantly and that you'd received a large windfall. She said you were worried about the debt you owed me and wanted to settle it immediately. I've already processed the draw from your linked account." I checked my balance. It was gone. The $2,200 I had scraped together for my own safety net had been vacuumed out because my mother knew my login. She'd helped me set up the account when I moved in, and I'd never thought to change the password. I was her daughter. I trusted her. That was the first lie I had to unlearn. I called her. She picked up on the first ring, her voice sweet and humming as if she were folding laundry. "How could you do that, Mom?" I asked. My voice was shaking. "That was my rent money. That was my survival." "Survival? Elena, don't be dramatic," she said. The sweetness didn't drop, it just sharpened. "You told us you were done helping the family. If you have enough money to be independent and done with us, then you certainly have enough to pay your debts. Mr. Henderson deserved his money." About integrity, something you seem to have forgotten lately. "You lied to him. You told him I had a windfall." "You do," she said. "You have all that money you're planning to hoard instead of helping your sister. That's a windfall in my book. Oh, and by the way, your father spoke to your Aunt Sarah. He let her know why you won't be coming to the family dinner next week. He told her you've been struggling with some personal issues and that we think it's best you have some space." She was very disappointed. She was going to ask you to be the godmother for her new baby, but after hearing about your instability, she's decided to ask Chloe instead. I felt the air go out of my lungs. Aunt Sarah was the only person in the family who actually listened to me. Being asked to be a godmother wasn't just a title, it was a seat at the table. It was a sign that I was seen as an adult, a peer, a person of character. "You're telling everyone I'm unstable. We're telling them the truth, Elena. You walked into our kitchen and threw a tantrum because your sister had a few nice things. You've become obsessed with her life. It's unhealthy. We're just protecting the family reputation. If you want to come back, you know what the price is. Apologize to Chloe, reinstate the transfers, and maybe we can tell Sarah you're feeling better." I hung up. I didn't cry this time. I walked to my bathroom and splashed cold water on my face. I checked my email. There was a message from my HR department. Someone had called the ethics hotline at my firm. They claimed I was using company resources, specifically the high-speed scanners and cloud storage, for personal litigious purposes and harassment of family members. They didn't fire me, but they pulled me into a meeting. My manager looked at me with a mixture of pity and confusion. I had to explain that it was a family dispute. It was the most humiliating 15 minutes of my professional life. I saw the way he looked at me afterward, not as the rising star in logistics, but as a situation. I lost my security deposit. I lost my standing with my favorite aunt. I lost my reputation at work. This was the punishment for saying no. My family didn't just want my money, they wanted my silence, and they were willing to burn my entire world down to get it. I walked back to my desk, my head throbbing. I looked at the $14.50 left in my checking account. I looked at the photo of Chloe on my phone, the one where she was holding a $400 bottle of wine in a French vineyard. I knew then that I couldn't just stop paying. I had to fight back, but I had nothing left to fight with. My apartment felt like a stranger's house. I sat on my sofa, a hand-me-down with a loose spring, and looked at the space where a dining table should have been. I hadn't bought one because I told myself the money was needed elsewhere. I looked at my kitchen, stocked with generic brand pasta and canned beans. For 7 years, I had lived like a student on a scholarship so my sister could live like a socialite on a yacht. I felt hollow. It wasn't just the money. It was the realization that my parents didn't value my hard work, they valued my utility. To them, I wasn't a daughter. I was a resource. I picked up my laptop. My hands weren't shaking anymore. They were cold. I logged into my banking app and navigated to the Scheduled Transfers tab. There it was, care account $1,450.00 monthly. I clicked the cancel button. A confirmation window popped up. "Are you sure you want to cancel this recurring transfer?" I clicked yes. The screen blinked. Transfer canceled. That was the only power I had left. It felt small, but it was the first time I had breathed a full breath in days. I knew the storm was coming. I knew they would hit back harder, but for that one moment the bleeding had stopped. The next morning at work I couldn't focus. Every time my phone buzzed, my stomach dropped. I kept expecting a frantic call from the landlord or another HR summons. I was sitting in the break room, staring at a cup of black coffee when David walked in. He didn't say anything at first. He just filled his mug, then sat down at the table across from me. He pushed a small box toward me. It was a single glazed donut. "You're vibrating," he said. It wasn't a joke. He was looking at my hands. "What happened?" I told him. I told him about the photos, the kitchen table, the security deposit, and the canceled transfer. I told him I was pretty sure my family was currently telling everyone I knew that I was a monster. David listened. He didn't interrupt. He didn't offer platitudes like they're still family or maybe it's a misunderstanding. He just nodded when I finished. "My father was an accountant for a firm that got caught in a massive embezzlement scheme," David said quietly. "He wasn't the one stealing, but he was the one who kept the books. He knew. He stayed silent because he thought he was protecting the company. In the end, the people who were actually stealing threw him under the bus to save themselves. Silence isn't loyalty, Alina. It's just a delay." He reached out and tapped the table. "You did the right thing," he said. "The floor might feel like it's falling away, but you're finally standing on something real, even if it's just the bottom." I ate the donut. It was sweet and cheap and exactly what I needed. For the first time in a week, someone believed me. "Check your phone," David said, standing up. "The silence is over." I looked down. My screen was a wall of notifications. The group chat, the one with all the aunts, uncles, and cousins, was moving so fast the messages were blurring. The first one I read was from my cousin Marcus. "Alina, how could you? We all knew you were doing well, but to cut Chloe off now, while she's this sick. My mom is crying. We're all disgusted." They weren't just angry. They were organized. The damage didn't stay in the family group chat. By Wednesday, it had seeped into every corner of my social life. My mother had spent the last 48 hours on a marathon of phone calls, turning my refusal to pay into a narrative of cold-blooded abandonment. I knew the lie had taken root when I walked into the local community center for my cousin Mia's bridal shower. I didn't want to go, but I knew that if I stayed away, I was essentially pleading guilty. I checked my reflection in the glass of the front door. I looked tired, but I looked like myself. I walked in, carrying a gift I'd bought months ago, a high-end stand mixer I'd saved for during the lean months. The room was filled with the smell of lavender and expensive catering. There were about 30 women there, aunts, cousins, and family friends who had known me since I was in diapers. As soon as the door clicked shut behind me, the room shifted. The low hum of conversation didn't just dip, it died. I saw my Aunt Janice, the one who used to send me handwritten birthday cards, look directly at me and then turn her chair 45 degrees so her back was to the door. I walked toward the gift table. My heels felt incredibly loud on the hardwood. I set the heavy box down. "Hi, everyone," I said. My voice sounded thin in the silence. No one answered. My cousin Mia, the bride-to-be, was sitting in a velvet armchair surrounded by ribbons. She looked at me, her eyes hard, and didn't even nod. I scanned the room for an empty seat. There was one at a round table near the back, next to my mother's sister, Aunt Brenda. As I moved toward it, Aunt Brenda reached out and physically grabbed her leather handbag from the floor, placing it firmly on the empty chair. "This seat is taken, Alina," she said. She didn't look up from her tea. "Taken by who, Brenda?" I asked. "The room is full." "It's taken by someone who actually cares about this family," she replied. I stood there in the middle of the room holding my coat. No one moved. No one offered me a place. They were choreographing my exile in real time. My mother was across the room, leaning against the buffet table, whispering into the ear of a family friend. She didn't look at me once, but I could see the small, satisfied set of her shoulders. She was the director of this play. I ended up standing against the back wall near the kitchen door. I stayed for an hour. I watched them toast to Mia's bright future and Chloe's brave struggle. My name wasn't mentioned, but my presence was a ghost they were all trying to ignore. The worst part came during the cake service. I was standing near the hallway when I heard my mother's voice from the other side of a decorative screen. She was talking to Aunt Sarah, the one she had lied to about my godmother status. "It's just so heartbreaking," my mother sighed. "Alina got that big promotion, and the first thing she did was cut Chloe's medical fund. She said she's tired of carrying the dead weight." I told her, "Alina, she's your sister." But she just laughed and said she wanted a better apartment instead. "We're actually hosting Christmas Eve as a fundraiser now. We're calling it Chloe's Care Night. We have to raise $5,000 by January or she loses her spot in the trial." I felt a surge of heat in my face. It wasn't just a lie, it was an invitation for the whole family to subsidize the fraud. That was the plan. My parents weren't just protecting Chloe, they were using her as a pass-through entity to collect donations from everyone they knew. And I was the convenient villain they needed to justify the collection plate. I walked out then. I didn't say goodbye. No one noticed I was gone until the door latched. I got into my car and sat in the dark for a long time. They hadn't just taken my money. They had taken my place at the table. I was sitting at my desk on Thursday morning, staring at a spreadsheet I'd been working on for 3 hours without actually processing a single row of data. My reputation at the firm was still in the probationary phase of the rumor mill. People didn't talk to me, they talked near me. David walked by and dropped a manila folder on my keyboard. He didn't stop. He didn't even look at me. He just kept walking toward the break room. I opened the folder. Inside was a stack of bank records, but they weren't mine. They were public-facing routing summaries for the Chloe Care account I'd been paying into for years. David had used his access as a senior auditor to look at the transaction trail. He hadn't broken any laws, this was all metadata visible to the sender, but he had connected dots I didn't know existed. "Look at the destination," he said, appearing at my shoulder with 2 coffees. I looked. The $1,450 I sent every month didn't go to a hospital. It didn't go to a pharmacy. It went into a high-yield travel savings account, but the names on the account weren't just Chloe S. It was a joint account, Chloe and our father. "Keep reading," David whispered. I flipped the page. There was a secondary transfer record. Every month, exactly 10% of the money I sent, $145, was moved out of that travel fund and into a separate account held by my mother. "The kitchen renovation," I said, the realization hitting me like a physical blow. "Last year, they redid the backsplash and the countertops. They told me they got a special family discount from a contractor." "They didn't," David said. "They used your medical money to pay for the marble." He pulled up a chair and sat down next to me. For the first time, he didn't look like a coworker, he looked like an ally. He opened a laptop and showed me a side-by-side comparison he'd built. On the left were the dates of my emergency transfers. On the right were the luxury charges on that joint account. "Your sister isn't just traveling, Alina. She's being subsidized by your parents so they can live a life they can't afford, too. They're all in on it. It's a closed loop." I leaned back, feeling the weight of the chair holding me up. I wasn't just being used by a spoiled sister. I was being harvested by my parents. They had turned my guilt into a home improvement fund and a first-class ticket. "Why are you helping me, David?" I asked. "You don't even know me that well." David looked at the folder, then back at me. "Because I hate a bad audit, and because nobody should have to pay for their own family's lies." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, foil-wrapped chocolate. He set it on top of the bank records. "Eat that," he said. "Then we're going to build a digital dossier. We aren't just going to tell them we know. We're going to prove it so clearly that they can't even blink. For the next 4 hours, we worked. David showed me how to link the routing numbers to specific merchant codes. We found the charge for the Dubai hotel. We found the charge for the business class seats. We even found a $3,000 charge for a medical consultant that was actually the deposit for my father's new riding lawnmower. That afternoon, I received an automated notification. It was a calendar invite for a group chat. Subject: Christmas Eve/Chloe's Care Fund. Organized by Mom. Participants: 14 family members. The description read, "Since Alina can no longer contribute to Chloe's survival, we are coming together as a family to ensure her January treatments are covered. Please bring your hearts and your checkbooks. We are all she has left." I looked at David. He looked at the screen. "Are you ready?" he asked. "I've been ready for 7 years," I said. "I just didn't have the map." The digital dossier was more than a collection of files. It was a map of a betrayal that had been drawn in real time for 7 years. David and I spent the weekend in a conference room with the blinds drawn, cross-referencing every single claim my mother had ever made with the digital footprints my sister and father had left behind. We found the smoking gun on Sunday night. It wasn't a photo of a beach. It was a scanned PDF of a contractor's invoice for the kitchen renovation, which my father had mistakenly uploaded to the shared family drive and then tried to hide in a subfolder labeled Chloe Lab Results. The invoice was for $14,500. The payments were broken down into 10 installments of $1,450. I sat back, the air leaving my lungs. They hadn't even bothered to change the amount. They had just taken my monthly medical wire and handed it directly to a man named Gary who installed Italian marble. They weren't even creative with the theft. They just relied on the fact that I would never check. "They used your guilt as a financing plan," David said. He looked tired, but his eyes were sharp. "This isn't just a family disagreement anymore, Alina. This is documented financial exploitation. You have everything you need." I looked at the screen. We had the luxury travel receipts. We had the kitchen invoice. We had the routing numbers showing my money moving into my father's travel fund and then back out to my mother's personal account. We had the timestamps of Chloe's seizure texts sent from a VIP lounge at Heathrow Airport. It was airtight. It was usable. "What are you going to do?" David asked. "I'm going to go to Christmas Eve," I said. "I'm going to let them set the stage. I'm going to let them pass the hat around for Chloe's life-saving treatment. And then I'm going to show everyone exactly what they're paying for." I spent Monday morning preparing the files. I didn't make a binder this time. I created a single, high-resolution PDF. I titled it "The Truth About the Chloe Care Fund." I ensured every page was clear, every receipt was highlighted, and every lie was countered with a piece of evidence. I felt a strange, cold calm. The hurt was still there, a dull ache in my chest, but the panic was gone. I was no longer a victim waiting for the next emergency call. I was the person with the data. On Tuesday, my mother sent a text to the group chat. "Mom, just a reminder for Saturday, dinner at 6. Please remember Chloe is very weak right now, so keep the noise down. We'll be doing the care presentation after the main course. We are so close to our goal." I didn't reply. I didn't need to. I had the leverage, and for the first time in my life, I knew exactly when to use it. I wasn't reactive anymore. I was strategic. I was the logistics manager of my own life. The days leading up to December 24th felt like watching a train wreck in slow motion, except I was the only one who could see the tracks were missing. The family group chat didn't just ping, it shrieked. It was a constant stream of prayers for Chloe and shame on Alina. My cousin Marcus posted a photo of a handmade, get well banner his kids had painted. Aunt Janice shared a link to a GoFundMe she'd set up to supplement the Christmas Eve collection. My mother responded to every single post with a heart emoji and a "we couldn't do this without your generosity." The level of confidence was staggering. They weren't just lying, they were performing. On Wednesday, Chloe finally made an appearance in the chat. She posted a selfie. She was wearing an oversized sweater and no makeup, holding a mug of tea with both hands. Her caption was, "Feeling so weak today, but I'm pushing through because I want to see everyone on Saturday." It's hard knowing some people think my life is an inconvenience, but I'm choosing to focus on the love. See you all soon. Choosing to focus on the love. I knew for a fact, based on the receipts David found, that when she took that photo, she was actually sitting in a luxury Airbnb in Aspen. She depaid for the weekend with the emergency blood panel, money I'd sent in November. I sat at my kitchen table, looking at the draft of the file on my laptop. I had named it the Chloe Care Fund, a financial audit. My father called me on Thursday night. His voice was different, calm, almost pitying. "Elena," he said, "I'm giving you one last chance. Your mother is still willing to let you come to dinner. We'll tell everyone that you had a change of heart and that you've made a significant contribution to the fund. You don't even have to say anything. Just bring a check for $5,000 to cover the January gap. We'll fix your reputation for you." "You'll fix it?" I asked. "With my own money. It's a small price to pay for your family, Elena. Think about your future. Do you really want to be the one who wasn't there for her sister?" "I'll be there, Dad," I said. "I wouldn't miss it for the world." I hung up and looked at the clock. 48 hours to go. On Friday, I did one final check of the routing numbers. Everything was still active. The joint account was still receiving small donations from my aunts. My father had just yesterday withdrawn $800 from it at an ATM near a high-end jewelry store. I didn't feel anger anymore. I felt a cold, professional curiosity. I wanted to see how far they would go before they realized the room had gone quiet. I spent Friday night at the office with David. He helped me set up a secure, one-click send for the dossier. We timed it. I didn't want to send it too early. They'd just delete it or block me. I wanted to send it when everyone was already in the room, when they were sitting with their phones in their laps, waiting for the care presentation. "You're sure about this?" David asked. "They spent 7 years making me feel like I was the one failing," I said. "I'm just returning the favor." I went home and ironed my dress, a simple, dark green wool dress. I looked at myself in the mirror. I didn't look like a villain. I didn't look like a victim. I looked like an auditor. The countdown was over. I walked into my parents' house at exactly 6:15 p.m. The air was thick with the scent of cinnamon and expensive pine. The house was glowing. My father had put up twice as many lights as usual, probably paid for by the medical equipment surcharge he'd tacked onto my October wire. There were 14 people in the living room. Aunt Sarah was there, holding her new baby. Aunt Janice was near the fireplace, clutching a small designer purse that looked suspiciously like the one Chloe had in her Greece photos. Marcus was nursing a beer by the tree. When I walked in, the room didn't go silent. It went stiff. It was the kind of artificial politeness you see in a courtroom before the jury comes back. "Elena," my mother said, stepping forward. She was wearing a new silk blouse. "You made it. I hope you brought what we talked about." "I brought exactly what was needed, Mom," I said. I didn't sit down. I stood near the buffet table, right next to the Chloe's Care Fund donation jar. It was already half full of envelopes and checks. People had been generous. People had been played. Chloe was draped across the armchair like a Victorian invalid. She had a pashmina wrapped around her shoulders and was sipping from a mug. She looked me in the eye and gave me a weak, pathetic little wave. "Hi, Elena," she whispered. "I'm so glad you're here. I was worried we'd have to start the presentation without you." "Wouldn't miss it," I said. Dinner was a masterclass in passive aggression. Every time someone mentioned a vacation or a new car, my mother would sigh and mention how some of us have to focus on survival. They were priming the pump. By the time the plates were cleared, Aunt Janice was already reaching for her checkbook, her eyes moist with sympathy for Chloe's brave struggle. My father stood up at the head of the table. He tapped his wine glass with a spoon. "Everyone, if I could have your attention," he said. "As you all know, this year has been incredibly difficult. Chloe's health has taken a turn that requires some very aggressive, very expensive new treatments. We're so grateful for those of you who have already stepped up. It's in times like these that you realize who your real family is." He looked directly at me when he said that. "Now," he continued, "we have a little presentation to show you what your support is going toward. Chloe, do you want to say a few words?" Chloe stood up slowly, leaning on the back of her chair for support. "I just want to thank everyone. It's hard to be this sick, and it's even harder when people you love don't believe you, but seeing you all here, it gives me the strength to keep fighting." She sat down to a round of soft ahs and a few sniffles. "Elena," my mother whispered, leaning in close. "The check now, before I tell everyone why you've really been absent." "Actually," I said, standing up, my voice was loud, clear. "I have something for the group chat. I know everyone's phones are on the table. You might want to check them." I hit send on my phone. The pings started almost instantly. It was a digital ripple moving around the table. Ding, ding, chirp, ding. 14 people reached for their devices. I watched Aunt Sarah first. She opened the file. Her eyes scanned the first page, the 83 photos. Then she scrolled to the second page, the routing numbers. "What is this?" Marcus asked, his brow furrowed. "Elena, is this a joke?" "It's an audit, Marcus," I said. "Keep scrolling. Page 4 shows the kitchen renovation invoice. Page 6 shows the hotel charges in Dubai that match the emergency surgery fund I paid for in November." "Elena, sit down," my father roared. He lunged for my phone, but I stepped back. "Dad, look at your own phone," I said. "You're a co-signer on the account. You knew exactly where the money was going. You even used $800 of Aunt Janice's medication donation to buy a new watch yesterday. Is that it on your wrist?" The room went deathly quiet. All eyes moved to my father's wrist. He reflexively pulled his sleeve down. "This is a lie," my mother screamed. She was shaking now, but not with grief. "She's unstable. She's been harassing us for weeks because she's jealous of her sister." "Jealous of what, Mom?" I asked. "Jealous of the business class tickets. I have the seat numbers. Chloe, you were in 4A. You posted the view of the wing from the oncology clinic window, but the wing has an Emirates logo on it." Aunt Sarah stood up. She wasn't looking at me. She was looking at Chloe. "Chloe," Sarah said, her voice trembling, "I gave you $5,000 last month. I took it out of my baby's college fund because your mother told me you wouldn't make it to Christmas without that specialized trial." "Aunt Sarah, I can explain," Chloe started, her voice suddenly strong, her weakness vanishing. It was part of a holistic recovery program. The travel was recommended by, I work for the charity you claimed sponsored that trip, Chloe," Sarah interrupted. Her face was turning a deep, dangerous red. "We don't send adults to 5-star resorts in Dubai. We provide hospice care for children. You cashed my check and you spent it on a tan." The defection was total. Aunt Janice dropped her pen. She didn't finish the check she was writing. She looked at the donation jar, then back at my mother. "You told me the bank was foreclosing on your house because of her bills," Janice said. "I've been sending you $300 a month for a year." "Janice, honey, you don't understand the stress we've been under," my mother pleaded. She reached out to touch Janice's arm, but Janice flinched away. "I understand that I paid for your new marble countertops," Janice said. My mother turned to the room, her face contorting. "We did it for her. We did it so she could have a life. Elena has everything and Chloe has nothing. Is it so wrong to want our daughter to be happy?" By stealing from your sisters, Sarah asked. She picked up her diaper bag. By lying to your nieces and nephews, you didn't do this for Chloe, you did this because you're all scammers. Don't you dare, my father yelled. Get out of my house, all of you. If you can't support us in our time of need, then you aren't family. We're leaving, Marcus said, standing up. He grabbed the donation jar and dumped the envelopes onto the table. And we're taking our money back. Everyone find your checks, now. The next 10 minutes were chaos. It wasn't a family dinner anymore, it was a crime scene. People were grabbing envelopes, shouting, and pointing at the photos on their screens. My mother was sobbing on the floor, but nobody went to comfort her. Chloe had retreated to the corner, her pashmina forgotten on the floor, looking like a cornered animal. I stood by the door and watched them all go. One by one, my family walked past me. Aunt Sarah paused at the door. She looked at me, then at the baby in her arms. I'm sorry, Alina, she said. We should have listened to you. We should have seen it. It's okay, Sarah, I said. I just wanted the truth to be the loudest thing in the room for once. When the last guest left, the house was silent. The Christmas lights were still twinkling, but the room felt cold. My father was sitting at the table, staring at the pile of 83 photos I'd left in the center of the debris. My mother was still on the floor, her silk blouse stained with spilled wine. You destroyed this family, my father said. He didn't look at me. No, I said. I just stopped paying for the facade. You destroyed the family when you put a price tag on my loyalty. I walked out the front door and didn't look back. The silence that followed Christmas Eve was the loudest thing I'd ever heard. In the weeks that followed, the family system didn't just crack, it disintegrated. Aunt Sarah led the charge, demanding a full accounting of every donation she'd made over the last 3 years. When my father couldn't provide hospital receipts, she filed a formal report for financial fraud. She wasn't the only one. Aunt Janice and 2 of my cousins followed suit. They didn't want the family to heal, they wanted their money back. My parents' house, the one with the Italian marble countertops paid for by my exhaustion, is currently on the market. They couldn't afford the legal fees and the mounting pressure from the relatives they had bled dry. My father doesn't call me anymore. My mother sent one last text, telling me I was dead to her for choosing a spreadsheet over my own blood. Chloe was forced to get a job. Last I heard, she's working at a high-end retail store in a mall 2 towns over. It's not a rooftop pool in Dubai, but she's finally breathing the same air as the rest of us. I changed my life, too. I took the $1,450 I used to send every month and put it into a high-yield savings account that actually belonged to me. 6 months later, I moved out of my studio and into a small house on the edge of town. It has a porch, a small garden, and a kitchen with laminate countertops that I chose and paid for myself. David came over last Sunday. He brought a bottle of champagne and a bag of those lemon tarts. We sat on my new porch, watching the sun dip below the tree line. There were no emergency calls, no shaking voices, no manufactured crises, just the sound of the wind in the leaves and the quiet knowledge that I didn't owe anyone my life. On my kitchen table, there is a small framed photo. It's not of my family. It's just a picture of my new house keys resting on the wooden surface. It reminds me that I finally unlocked the door to a life that belongs to me. I used to think that being the strong one meant carrying everyone else. I realize now that true strength is knowing when to set the weight down. Looking back, I have to ask, would you have confronted them privately and given them a chance to lie again? Or would you have dropped the receipts in the group chat for the whole world to see? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. If you've ever been the family's ATM, I want to hear how you finally closed the account. And if you're looking for more, there's a story in the description about a woman who discovered her husband was hiding a second family, using her own brother's identity. It's a wild ride. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button for more stories about finding the truth. Thanks for listening.